Hey, good evening. Welcome to Falls Township Board of Supervisors meeting. It's 7:05 p.m. This is March 3rd, 2015. We'll begin with the salute to the flag, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Here.
Mr. Brasky?
Here.
Mr. Harvey?
Here.
Mr. Dents?
Here.
Mr. Rocco?
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we have public comment first. We don't have anybody signed up for public comment. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gray. All right, so we'll move right to item number 2. We had a relatively light agenda, and so in discussing things with the rest of our board, we decided we wanted to take some time and have some updates and important information we felt, stuff that we felt was important, conveyed to the residents from some of our staff. Mr. Dents had raised what I thought was a very good idea. The rest of the board thought was a good idea to have some explanation about the snow emergency. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of feedback by way of email on social media sites questioning why we declare snow emergencies. Why do you always do this? People ask us about the parking ordinance in the snow. Why do we have a towing ordinance that you can't park on the street? How come when I move my car, my neighbor doesn't, his didn't get towed? Stuff like that. Why did the drive get plowed and then it took a couple hours before my street got plowed? So I thought we could have some representatives come and explain to us so that everyone can see the method to their madness, if you would.
Right. And so this evening we have Joe Arneo from Public Works. We also have Lieutenant Plotnick from our police department. We have Rich Tipolito, our fire marshal. And they're really the ones who make the decision. You know, and Chief Wilcox is here as he has been in the past, and so they're really the ones who make the decision about this. It's not something the board decides. We don't call Mr. Gray and say, okay, let's declare a snow emergency. Usually we're calling, asking, are we declaring a snow emergency? I don't know who wants to go first out of this trio of illustrious employees here, pointing fingers.
The fire marshal. We'll start with why we declare a snow emergency.
For the record, Joe did volunteer. I just want you to know that. The reason we declare a snow emergency really is just for safety. It's so we can assist the road crew and the emergency services with access down any road. When we declare it, you're supposed to move any vehicle off any city or any township street. It allows the fire trucks, the squads, the police, and the plows to get down without having to navigate around them. We've had roads that they couldn't get down because cars are parked on the street. So by declaring that, and we have gotten a lot of cooperation, I have to say. I've been questioned the same way that I'm sure you guys have with, well, you know, there's a car out so-and-so, how come it wasn't ticketed, towed, whatever. The short and quick answer, I guess, is, first of all, we have to look at how busy the police are. We're not going to pull, you know, a police officer off the street with a priority call because somebody left their car on the street. Secondly, we defer to Joe and to his guys. Is it a problem? If they call and say it's a problem, if I know about it or if Sergeant Finelli knows about it, they'll send somebody over. We'll try and make contact to move it. If it's not moved, then it's towed. It's as simple as that. But it's really on an as needed. We ask for cooperation. If you don't cooperate, we have the right to do it. So I guess that's the best way I can say it. If it's in the way, then you're going to get ticketed and towed. If someone, you know, has a problem, but we're not going to get to everyone. We realize that. We ask for cooperation out of the township. So I guess that's the best way I can put it.
So what is your method to madness on declaring? What makes you say this is a snow emergency?
Normally we look at, well, Joe and I, we talk a lot overnight. Mr. Gray and I will talk. We'll talk to Ray. Ray works a lot at night. You know, we all talk amongst ourselves. How is it? Are we out for fire calls? What are the roads like? Are you plowing? Are you having trouble getting up and down the streets? And it's just a cooperative effort where we talk amongst ourselves. Is it needed? Do we have to get these cars off the street? We try and do it early before it happens so people have time in the, you know, before the snow starts. We do have in our ordinance that if we get blindsided or if the forecast isn't correct, that if it happens overnight, we weren't expecting it, you have to move it by 9 in the morning. We try and give people, and you know how the forecasts are. Sometimes we're wrong. We declare something, we ask you to get off the road, and we don't get anything. We're going by the same forecast that everybody else is.
Sometimes the
So-
weatherman is wrong.
Sometimes the weatherman is wrong, yeah, I know. And, we take we take the best information we have, and if it looks like it's coming, we're gonna ask you to get off the street. So,
Okay.
all right,
Right.
anything else?
Other questions
other
for
questions?
the fire marshal about that?
No.
All right. Let's have Mr. Arneo just give us an idea. Mr. Dents mentioned, and we've heard this before, about, this street gets plowed, and this street gets plowed later. First off, understand that, our responsibility is only for township roads. We are not responsible for plowing PennDOT roads. And so when people complain, well, New Falls Road wasn't plowed, okay, or Tyburn Road wasn't plowed. Well, they're not township roads. They're, that's the state has to do that. So we're talking here, and Mr. Arneo's crew, guys that were out the other night, putting down salt and plowing a little bit, and they'll probably be out again, maybe not tonight because it's supposed to turn to rain, but probably Wednesday night and Thursday. From the looks of it, they're going to be out. So I guess if you don't mind just giving us an idea of, from your point of view, from the operations of the public works, when do you start plowing? Because sometimes I've heard people say, well, it's already snowing, how come they haven't plowed yet? I said, well, the first flake just hit. They're not going to start plowing for. And then what kind of order do you do, certain streets before others, that kind of thing?
Right. Good evening, guys. Basically, you have to time manage the storm out in my head and on paper, because I have to allow for rest periods and breakdowns and just a multitude of things that happen during the storm. Emergencies, the police call and they need something quick, as far as something plowed out or something like that. So there's a lot that goes into it as far as preparing before it even gets here. And then once it gets here, like I said, we try not to get out too early, but we try not to get out too late. For instance, say this Thursday morning, it's supposed to snow 4 to 8 inches, roughly, off the top of my head right now is what they're saying. We'll try to get in probably like around 5 a.m. to get the main roads open for rush hour. Makefield, Mill Creek, North and South Olds, Cabot Boulevard, they're our major arteries in town, and try to get them opened up so when the commuters hit it between 6 and 8, they're at least, we're started. The storm's supposed to go till afternoon time, they're saying. So once the snow stops, it's usually 8 to 10 hours for us to clean up after it stops. So 5 a.m. after it stops at like 2, you're talking about 9, 10 at night. So you're already into like a 16 to 20 hour day. So you have to allow for breaks and stuff like that. As far as plowing itself, like I said, we do the main stuff first. There's 13 routes in town. Everybody's got a main road in their section, and it's pretty easy to map it out. If you're on a designated snow emergency route, which we don't have anymore, but the signs are still posted, you're going to get plowed first, because they're the major roads in and out of the sections. They're the wider streets usually. And then from there, we move into the side streets, and then from there to like the dead ends, cul-de-sacs, stuff like that.
Okay, all right. Any questions, Mr. Arneo?
I know times like last year when we were getting hammered time after time, week after week, it seemed like it was snowing almost every day. I guess you guys, like you said, burning the candle at both ends, I guess it wears you down.
Yeah, it does. And our crew, we have a veteran crew. We're probably, average age is probably over 40. And, everybody has ailments, everybody has aches. Everybody's getting older, more cranky, and, it's just something else you deal with as a boss. But it takes its toll on you. This year already, since January, we've already been out like 15 times. You wouldn't think about that because they've all been all small nuisance stuff.
Right.
But you still have to get out there and attempt to do something. For the most part, I think we do pretty well. Like I said, complaints are pretty non-existent. I mean, the most complaints we get are after the storm's over. You plowed a boulder in my driveway after I shoveled. Well, the snow's heavy. I can't help when it rolls off the plow and lands in your driveway. You pushed snow onto my sidewalk. The snow was dry this time and, you know, pushed over the green strip between the curb and the sidewalk and got some of your sidewalk. You get stuff like that, nothing major. All in all, yeah, we do okay.
Okay.
I think you do a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that's been consistent. I mean, the time that I've been here, you hear people that live in other townships. You'd say they can tell they're in Falls because all of a sudden they get to a plowed road. You know, they go from a road that's snowy and all of a sudden it's plowed. You know, and complaints I hear from, you know, being a teacher, I sometimes have kids who live in Birch Valley, students who live in Birch Valley, but they're on the Bristol Township side. And they, you know, they say, oh, it's, you know, we can always tell where Bristol Township is because the Falls Township plows stop, and then right at that line, and then it's like, you know,
paved,
now it's
too.
Bristol Township, and they're paved, there's curbs. So no, I mean, I think you know what you told us is pretty valuable. It's interesting the 8 to 10 hours after the storm stops. You know, you don't necessarily think that's that long.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically because your main roads you're doing more than once usually.
Mm-hmm.
Side roads in a storm, 4 to 8 inch range, you're hoping just to do them one time.
Mm-hmm.
So most guys try to rotate their route a little bit. The mains are the mains, but the side streets, so instead of doing side streets over by Stanwood and Eldridge and Dunbury this time first, I'll do them last. So everybody kind of does that with their route, so people don't feel like I'm always last.
Right.
Sometimes you can't, you can't make anybody happy.
Sure.
With the snow, you usually can't make anybody happy with the snow anyway.
Right. Right.
We do try to do that to rotate, so nobody's always last or feeling that they're last. Cul-de-sacs and dead ends, they're tougher. You know, unfortunately, there's not as many people on those roads, and
Right.
you know, they get there when they get there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. I know you. I think. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I still have a couple of comments.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Okay, that's okay. Is the cars on the street. We deal with the. I usually deal with the police sergeant who's on duty, and we have radio communication. And our biggest problem, if I can stress anything, is side street parking where you park side by side. Most of Levittown, Fairless Hills, roads are 26 foot wide. You put a car on one side, a car on the other, that's like 8, that's 16. Leaves you 10 feet. The plow's 10 feet. Try to wiggle them through, you're taking the mirror off, you risk sliding into the car. Those cars, we call the police and they have to be moved because we can't get through. I can't always send a small truck with a 9-foot plow to cut a path through there, or he'd never get his section done.
Right.
So that's probably the biggest one. And the second one is throwing the snow back in the street. The snow blowers, and people just shoveling in the street because they think the salt's out there. After we plow it, if we don't come back, you end up with, ice mounds in the streets. Mm-hmm. And it's happened before. And they cause a traffic hazard.
I didn't buy a snowblower yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is illegal. It's something we made illegal actually a long time ago. I think first couple of years I was on the board, I think we made it illegal to throw snow, whether by shovel or by snowblower, into the street for the reason you're saying. You're creating a traffic hazard for everybody else. And then sort of making more work for our guys, because people say, oh, they didn't plow my street. Well, no, they did plow the street. But, your neighbor decided to blow his whole sidewalk and apron and driveway into the street, so now it's, they're not going to come back around just for that property.
Yeah, year by year, it's gotten better, along with the cars off the street. I mean, it's been getting better. It's just phenomenal working with the police this way. They can hear it sometimes before I do on my radio that somebody's calling me about cars side by side, or, and as soon as they can get somebody over there, they're knocking on the door and
Right.
trying to get it moved or towed.
Right.
But, a lot of times they try to get it moved first. They don't just go out and tow.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I was going to ask, if you're done, I was going to ask, I know Sergeant Finelli was the one you were talking about, Fire Marshal DiPolito also made reference to Sergeant Finelli and the work he's doing, I guess, at night. So maybe talk about the whole procedure of how we decide, this car needs to move. What do we do from that point in terms of notifying the owners, that kind of thing.
So, your voice insane.
First off, gentlemen, working with our road crew is unbelievably phenomenal to do. This township, it's always the first one where the roads are clear. As we go from one of our sections to another, we tend to go through other townships. And just as everyone's saying, as soon as you realize when you reach Falls Township, because the road has been plowed already. The life of a snowstorm, it almost comes in phases for us in the police department. It'll start out with increased accidents, then it will move on to disabled vehicles on the side of the road, and this is when we'll start getting Joe involved. I only have a certain number of resources to work with at night. So if I get an accident, especially on a curve at nighttime on Route 1 northbound, I'm going to use up 3 or 4 police officers because I need to set up a safety zone before it to notify people. And I'll only have so many officers working at nighttime. So when Joe will call me, what happens is there's a greater delay for Joe. Joe will reroute his guys, and as something becomes open and available, we get the roadway back open, Joe will then have the guy come back. But all that takes time. That's why it's important to get the message out to the township residents that not only is it the snow emergency routes that need to be cleared, but what appeared to be most confusing to everyone this year was the side roads also needed to be cleared. Where I think I saw some of the greatest improvement this year is once we did get the side roads cleared, once the message is out there and Joe comes down and his crew comes down with a plow, he does what he calls curb to curb. They clear that roadway totally smooth and clean from curb to curb. When you start getting 1 or 2 vehicles on, as Joe described, these very small roads, and especially when they're parked adjacent to each other, the problem compounds itself because snow piles up on all sides of that vehicle, which makes it even smaller. And there's almost an effect where once one person sees it, it seems to be allowable for everyone else. And then other people will continue to keep their cars out there. Recently, we responded to a medical call. If you guys don't know, Falls Township has EMTs that also respond out before the paramedics, especially on instances like this, where the paramedic vehicles are a little slower, the officers are already out there, and we can provide some first aid to the residents. We did get out to this particular call, and it required several resources as far as police, fire, and EMS to be out there. In front of this house, there were 2 vehicles parked across from each other. So when you added in 2 ambulances that had to come out, a fire truck, and several police vehicles, the problem just got very, very big and very, very messy. And if the roadway had been cleared of those vehicles, I believe it would have been a lot easier and a lot safer. If I could, while I'm up here, just a couple other things I'd like to remind people are that it is going to take us longer to get out there. When you have an emergency, it does take every one of these services longer to get out there. We are not magical. We have to drive at a reduced speed. We're afraid of crashing ourselves going out there. If someone else already crashed, there's a good likelihood that our guys are going to crash. So we take our time getting out there. I like to remind people that when you see fire, EMS, even someone broken down on the side of the road, Pennsylvania has what's called a move-over law. If you are able to, you need to move over 1 adjacent lane from that, or reduce your speed if you can't move over. On any given snowstorm, police officers that I work with are probably hit almost every night. Almost every night they're out there and a car is either passing by them inches away or is sliding to a stop a short distance from the back of the police car. It's scary. We all want to go home to our families. And we do, almost give a nod to the people that move over and give us that courtesy. People who drive four-wheel drive vehicles, it doesn't make you invincible. You're basically,
I know that guy. Yeah.
You're basically just like a giant rhinoceros with tennis shoes on an ice skating rink. You're going to crash. Eventually, you will go down the road and you will crash. Slow down. You're just like everybody else. Physics applies to you also. And lastly, I would just like to thank all the people in the township that when we get out there and we are pushing a vehicle that has become stuck, 9 times out of 10, someone else will stop, get out of their car, and help us push that vehicle. on any given snowstorm night, we're probably pushing 10 or 15 vehicles. It adds up. It gets very, very tiring. So I'd like to thank everyone who I didn't have the chance to thank because either it was cold out or you just gave me a nod and ran back to your vehicle. Thank you for your helping us out, the entire police department. If I can get back to one other thing, and that is towing the vehicles, when to tow, why, where. As I kind of started in the beginning of saying, it comes down to resources. If I have the availability to send guys out to where Joe needs them, I will send them out. The officer then gets out there to run the tag on the car. We're trying to figure out where people don't like to park very far from their houses, so we're guessing it's one of 4 houses, and we'll go and we'll knock on the door and we'll ask them to move the vehicle. If they can move the vehicle in a reasonable amount of time, we'll allow them to do that. Matter of fact, we'd rather you move your vehicle. It's going to save the officer time. You can move on to the next one. We do not want to tow your vehicle. We don't get any money for it. It's not joyous to us. You know, we understand that you are upset. We do not want to tow your vehicles. That being said, recently in the last snowstorm, we had Superior following around the officer. Because what we get sometimes is we get people that say, oh, I'll do that in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, officer, and then they never come back out to the vehicle. I did find that by having Superior there, 1, people took us more seriously that we were going to tow that vehicle, and 2, the ones that we did unfortunately have to tow, we were able to, you know, get the vehicle towed. The officer didn't have to wait for then the tow truck to drive out, pick up the vehicle, and then leave the scene. So it was smoother this year as opposed to any other year, I think. Is there any questions I can answer for anyone?
Questions for Sergeant Felling?
Yeah, do we ticket the folks as well, or we just tow them, right?
In the ordinance, it says we can ticket them, but it almost seems to insult to injury type thing.
Exactly, right. Yeah,
We're
in
trying to
Falls
use some
Township,
discretion.
so just to be clear, when we tow cars, Falls Township gets no money, so
No.
there's no incentive for us to tow the car.
If anything,
Costs us money.
yeah, if anything, it's more paperwork for the officer because now he has to fill out property forms and he has to fill out an incident report. So again, we more likely would just love you to move your car, and the officer can move on to the next one. Again, this is also taking resources away that could be doing other things. So the message getting out there, those side streets too, it needs to be moved off the side streets, not just the snow emergency routes.
Right. Thank you.
Sergeant Felling, do you find that most people are complying, they want to come out and move their car?
Yeah, we have a great township. We have great residents in this township. It's only when we tow the car that people become upset with us. But most people, if I get a chance to talk to them that night, they understand why. They understand that, you know, hey, this is going on. It seemed that some people said that they didn't realize that they had to have the vehicle moved. And, you know, I explained to them about the notifications in the ordinance and everything else, and they seemed somewhat reasonable by it, but no one's happy that when you have to pay money for your car getting towed, so.
Yep.
You described, you know, that guy that's got the $80,000 Lexus SUV that thinks he's indestructible. The other guy that drives me crazy is the one that thinks he's got the right of way just because he has a plow in his truck. And I'm not saying all guys plowing snow are bad, but you have the guys in these parking lots of stores.
Private plows.
Private plows. I'm not saying all of them are bad either, but they think they have the right of way, and they're flying in and out of the street, and you see that a lot too. Is
Yeah.
that a big problem or not really?
You have to pick your poisons on those nights. My vehicle is a F-250. It's equipped with a 4-wheel drive, but to grab these guys up all the time and stop them and just even to chase after them, it's just not worth it. Most of the time, I just let Darwin take hold and they'll figure it out.
Natural selection take its course, right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Blake.
Oh, that was
Go ahead.
me, yeah, that was good.
I don't know if the board was aware of the board was down to.
I saw that today. You wanna, so you wanna go to Mike and talk about it?
Gentlemen, if I may, I'm just going to read it very quickly. The snow emergency, or the snow ordinance, was boiled down to a very simple fact sheet here. Simply put, there's going to be a snow emergency or there's not a snow emergency declared. If there is a snow emergency, it can be declared for up to 72 hours. The emergency and the declaration thereof can be found on the Township website, Township channel, and social media. Vehicles must be removed from all township roads during the emergency. If not, the vehicle may be towed and/or cited for, from $20 up to $50. And when no snow emergency is declared, when snow accumulation requires plowing, all vehicles must be removed from the township streets immediately. Parking is prohibited for 12 hours after snowfall stops or the roadway is cleared of snow and ice, whichever occurs last. The exception is if snow starts after 9 p.m. Or 9 p.m. between 9 a.m., vehicles must be removed 12 hours within 12 hours, or for 12 hours, I'm sorry, for 12 hours beginning at 9 a.m. And again, they could be cited up to $50, but it boils it all down to the bottom saying on the sheet here, when in doubt, move your car, and it really is that simple. As township residents, if anybody sees our plows on the road, they're plowing, so I would suggest you move your cars. And if you're scratching your head and you're thinking, well, I don't know if they are or aren't plowing, move your car. It's going to be the safe way to go. We don't want to have to tow cars or ticket them, and it really is that simple.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
We can
It's
have
good.
Matt put that on the website as
And I
well.
think it's our, that notification that Lieutenant Plutnik gave us, we're going to put on the website or
Yeah, so
the,
we'll be on the website and Facebook.
in the TV channel, I guess,
And the
too.
TV channel.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Because the winter may not be over yet also, I promise to have some copies of this for the next township meeting. I'll put them out in the back so people that come in can take some and pass them out to their friends and relatives. And we'll also carry these in the patrol cars. And if people ask, hey, what is the ordinance all about, it really is this simple, and hand them a copy.
Right.
Okay.
Ri-
All right.
Richie, I have a question for you.
Yeah, I had something too before you ask. Go ahead.
Are we allowed to use the Notify, Bucks
I
Notify?
was going to bring that up.
Okay.
For I've had one complaint. People talk about not having access to social media, no computers for whatever reason. We do the best we can getting the word out. We put it out on Facebook. We put it out on the website. The problem is the cable channel. If this happens at 3 in the morning when we get something, we're talking amongst ourselves, and let's declare it at 6 in the morning, getting it on the cable channel probably isn't realistic, nor is anyone sitting up watching TV. There is Ready Notify. That's on the website for people that sign up. It'll notify you via text, email, not phone calls. Phone calls are a separate animal that you can use, but not for those snow emergencies. So if you're not signed up for Ready Notify, I suggest you do it.
Right.
I don't have it off the top of my head. It's Ready Notify. It's on the website,
Yeah.
though. You can go out there and sign yourself up. You can put your text or your phone number in for cell phone, for text messages, your email address, and your phone number if you want a phone call. Something catastrophic happened, we would send out,
Recorded
I'm trying
message.
to think, shelter in place.
Yeah.
You know, if we have a hazmat release, or if we had a police issue or a fire issue going on, we may tell you, we'll make phone calls. We'll have the system make the phone call and say, stay in, you know, close your windows, whatever. So that is available. But the cable channel, where people want to see it, and, you know, I've had people say, you know, that's what we use. Well, it doesn't do us any good in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So we do the best we can getting it out there.
Yeah, yeah, and as always, and I know it's been said by everybody who's come up here so far, I mean, you know, the responsibility, our staff, you know, whether it's police or the public works, fire marshal's office, you know, the manager, they're doing a lot of the work, but there is still some responsibility on you. I mean, you know, you can't miss. I was talking to my wife today. I mean, what would the people on the news do without the weather? You know, the local news. I mean, it's all they talk about. You know, every storm is, you know, we're all going to die. You know, that kind of thing. And it's just the number one thing. And I'm sure it makes their night every time there's a snowstorm. Everybody knows, whether you have internet, smartphones, whatever. Everybody knows 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches. Everybody knows about it. So if it's more than 2 inches, you know you have to move your car. You know, and maybe you forget, maybe it's more, maybe the weather report's wrong, maybe you move it and it ends up being nothing. Okay, well, at least you moved it. Maybe they say 1 inch and it ends up being 3 inches. Well, you know, our guys aren't going out with a ruler and then sort of finding people because they didn't move their car because it's 2.5 inches and 3 inches. But you do have to sort of say, you know, as I don't know if it was Lieutenant Plutnik who said it or not, or Sergeant Finelli, when in doubt, just move it. You know, it doesn't hurt. Okay. Having a snow emergency also gives us some other things, and Mr. Clark, just as a township, what are some things we're able to do under a snow emergency that we're not sort of able to do otherwise?
Mr. Chairman, in addition to what has already been mentioned by Officer Finelli and Lieutenant Pletnick, when we declare a snow emergency, and we really haven't faced this problem in the last several years, but it allows the police department, working in conjunction with the fire marshal and the manager, to go beyond just issues regarding parking of vehicles. If we were to be hit with a certain storm that necessitated trying to get people off of roadways because they were creating a danger by being out and operating a vehicle, for instance, they were creating a danger not only to themselves, but any of the plows that we may have out, or any of the first responders who may need to go out to them if they're in any sort of danger. So it gives us that additional ability to take it a step further than just getting your car off the side road when it's being parked. I think, as you heard Officer Finelli talk about, often when they're out during trying to assist a car on the side of the road, people are whizzing by them anyway, and it's a danger to the officer, any other first responder who may be out there. If we do hit a certain snowstorm where it is determined that we have to tell people not to be driving, I think we had it last year where the governor closed the turnpike for a period of time, not just to protect the drivers themselves, but also to protect our employees. We're able to do that. So that's what it does. It lets us go a little step further in taking precautions to make sure that everybody's safe.
Okay. All right, and you mentioned something that when Sergeant Finelli was talking reminded me, and you just reminded me again. A few years ago, there was the horrible accident on Route 1 involving Detective Jones from Middletown, who was hit, and killed, horribly by somebody who was under the influence. However, one of the other compounding problems was that he had pulled over somebody, on that road, but because of snow, his car and the car he'd pulled over were a little bit further, into the lane than it would have been if there hadn't been any snow. And the idea of moving over a lane, whether it's snowy out or not snowy out, whether it's a beautiful sunny day or whether it's rainy at night, you go past somebody, an officer on the side of the road who has somebody pulled over for whatever reason, just moving over, is safer for obviously the officer, whoever's been stopped, for yourself. And so and I'm glad you sort of brought that up, and it sort of reminded me of that incident. So, any other comments or questions for any of our
No, thank you.
staff here? No? I want to thank Mr. Dents for it was a good idea, I think, to have this. I think it was very, very valuable. For a lot of people out there that had questions about how does this work, why do they do this, how come they call it, we're not calling one tonight, but maybe they'll call one Thursday, how did they make that decision? And that's all, I think all the information was really, really valuable, so I appreciate that. And thank you for coming out tonight, and I'm sure you'll be back at work doing all this in a couple of nights if the weather people are correct. So, but thank you again. Appreciate it. It was good stuff.
Think spring.
So, okay. Yeah, Mr. Gray just bringing up here that every snow emergency is put on television, and the snow ordinance is always on there as well. Okay, so. All right, kind of in the same idea, just conveying information to people. Our Park and Rec department, Mr. Brian Andrews has been in charge of that department for almost a year now.
Almost a year.
Almost a year. And we thought, we know he's been working hard along with Ms. Fox, his the Assistant Park and Rec Director. So we invited them here to talk about some of the things they're doing, give people an idea of some of the activities coming up and everything that's happening in Park and Rec.
Okay. First thing I want to do is thank Public Works. Joe and the crew does a great job. The parks, we've had some issues, obviously, with the weather. They've done a great job cleaning them up, getting them open. Our patrons really want to be in that park, even when it's icy and so forth. So I'd like to thank Joe and his crew. Okay, thanks for inviting me. I'd like to announce a few programs we have coming up. Our first program coming up is our annual Breakfast with the Bunny and Egg Hunt program. We're going to be doing them on the same day this year. I know in the past they've done them on separate days. I think we're going to do better by doing them on the same day. It's going to be Saturday, March 21st. The Breakfast with the Bunny will take place 9 to 11 a.m. at the Senior Center. And the egg hunt will take place from 1 to 2 p.m. at the community park. We're looking to do it in phase 2 on the peninsula. We think that could be a good picture opportunity. We can put it on our Facebook and our website, that sort of thing. So we're looking forward to that. As of now, we have 42 people registered for the breakfast and 33 registered for the egg hunt. We'll get a lot of walk-ups that day, but I think we can definitely work that out. I'd like to remind the residents that registration for Pinewood Pool and our summer camp is now available online. The early bird discount ends April 2nd. So we encourage all our residents who want to swim and sign up by April 2nd. Summer camp is a popular program and it fills up quickly. So we encourage anyone interested to apply immediately. We usually cap it at 175, so we want to get the word out to our residents to do that at once. Another activity we have coming up, Saturday, April 25th, we're going to do an Earth Day celebration event at 3 Arches. We're going to be working with Comcast Cares, our Teen Advisory Board, the Park and Rec Board, and our Shade Tree Commission. We're going to spruce up the grounds by planting new flowers, shrubbery, and just basically cleaning up the grounds around 3 Arches. We actually have a meeting with the Shade Tree Commission on Thursday to come up with some ideas for plantings. We're talking about native plantings, different types of shrubbery and everything. So we're really excited about doing that and sprucing that area up. That's Saturday the 25th, 10 to 3 of April. Also, we have in mind a co-ed one-day adult volleyball tournament down at the community park, beach volleyball. We're looking to do that mid-May, Saturday, May 16th. We anticipate that being pretty much an all-day affair. We would probably max that at 8 teams. It'll be a double elimination tournament. We think about bringing a DJ out there, encourage people to bring food, barbecue, and just have a good time. So there's some of the activities we have coming up.
Cool.
Warmer activities. Questions?
For the volleyball, how many people per team?
6.
Okay.
6 on 6. Probably three men, 3 women.
Okay.
So.
All right. Other questions for?
Oh. Do you want to ask if we're going to form a team?
Oh, no.
Probably kickball. That was a terrible idea.
You're not going to play this year?
No.
Kickball will be in July.
Like Don already said, you can't just get off the couch and start doing that.
I will come back and announce the kickball later.
Yeah, Brian, can you talk a little bit about the registration process and why you are asking people to do it even though it's free?
For
Or even the breakfast with the bunny and
it
I don't know if
definitely
you're doing
helps
it for-
us plan for buying the food and just planning space at the facility. We did it for the Christmas event, and it worked tremendously well. Because we get a lot of walk-ups that day, it just gets really chaotic in there, and it's just easier for us to purchase what we need as opposed to just buying stuff in bulk and getting stuck with. I think that has happened in the past, and we want to try to avoid that.
Okay.
That's the rationale behind it.
Is there a cap for the number of people that can attend?
120 at the senior center, and we pretty much had that for the Christmas event. I anticipate us getting close to that again I know it's a little slow right now, but people are realizing, I think Easter's coming earlier this year, so once they see, hey, we got to get on this, it'll pack in there at the last minute.
So if they register, they're guaranteed a spot if they walk on and you're full.
Correct.
Yeah.
We did take walk-ins. We anticipated a little bit of that at Christmas time, and we will be able to accommodate them. What we will do is to encourage them to sign up for an account on Community Pass that day, and that's what we did for Christmas. So we will be able to accommodate. Some people sign up, don't show up. It usually kind of works out, but overall, the pre-registration's a no-brainer for us.
Yeah, got it. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No.
You did mention 3 Arches and doing some of the beautification there with Comcast.
Yes.
How's 3 Arches being used currently?
Right now, we used it last night for our Parks Board meeting, and our that was our first meeting there, and it was a great atmosphere for it. We also are partnering with the LIFT program. They're going to be doing a meeting there in April. I go to a lot of their meetings. I'm involved with them. So they're going to use it in April. Talked to Sean Murphy from Falls Soccer Club. They might have their executive board meetings there once a month. I've reached out to the Boy Scouts, different community organizations for meetings and so forth. We're pretty much open for business there. We will do bridal shower, rentals, smaller events, with the limitations on the space.
Right. Yeah, it is an older house. I know there was some talk about, people asked, it's a beautiful setting, could use it for receptions, for weddings, and it really isn't set up for
No, not now. No, it's just not a feasible.
You don't have the kitchen facilities, you don't have the bathroom
No.
facilities,
No.
but you, like you said, small events.
Yes.
You know, makes a lot of sense.
And yeah, I've reached out to a lot of groups, and you know, we've gotten some good feedback. A lot of people are going to get back to us and so forth. And you know, we're happy to accommodate the public anytime. Just call me at any time. Extension 220.
Okay. All right. Anything else? No? Okay. Thank you very much for coming out. Appreciate it.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Okay. Move to item number 4 on our agenda, which is consider rescinding authorization for advertisement for ordinance chapter 209 zoning. This was an ordinance that was discussed, it was advertised and then discussed at length at our last meeting. You know, subsequent to that meeting, there is some court action that's taken place regarding a proposed development in Falls Township. And so the decision of the board, the feeling of the board is just to rescind this authorization to advertise. This is something, if we choose to look back at this in the future, we can choose to look at this in the future. So this would rescind any advertisement, which essentially, you know, were this to come up again, we'd have to start all over again with advertisement. Comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, I'll make one. I think with the legal action recently by the builders, it makes sense. I will be honest and say I don't see the need to protect another borough, like Marsville Borough. So I'd like to see us at that time, when it's right, personally, I'd like to see that change because, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me that we're worried about a neighboring borough who doesn't have a law like that, so.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Other comments or questions?
No, I just said I agree with Mr. Rocco. At some time, and point in the future, revisit it. There's no point in having an ordinance that extends beyond our township borders.
Okay.
All right.
Just so we're clear, we have no intention of revisiting this anytime soon. This is the same as tabling this, Mr. Clark. There's no need to table it, because this is going away until we have to advertise and start all over again.
At the last meeting, you authorized advertisement again, so based on that authorization, we would have gotten it ready for advertisement for a subsequent meeting. What this action does is it brings the potential ordinance back to square one. Mr. Gray will have to be given direction to put authorization to advertise on an agenda. It'll have to go on that agenda, it'll have to be voted on, then it'll have to be advertised, so it starts the whole process all over again. So you are correct, Mr. Dents. In effect, this is tabling it indefinitely.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? No? Okay. All right, so is there a public comment needed? Sir, a motion to open public comment?
So moved.
Sir, excuse me. We haven't actually voted yet to open public. Is there a second to open public comment?
Seconded.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, Mr. Rosenberg.
Thank you. I have some questions, and part of it is based on I guess, the minutes from the last meeting. Number 14, D, says Member Rocco moved to approve the time extension for Buckingham Retail Wawa located at West Trenton Avenue. And my understanding, Mr. Harvey, is when we opened that last meeting, you said to the public that there was nothing before the supervisors regarding Wawa or that property, that it was a dead proposal, there was nothing going on. And apparently there was something and there was an extension. What is that about?
The extension is from when they entered in the original plans. When they start the land development process, a clock starts. If we do not act upon that plan within the given time, the plan becomes granted.
Excuse me, Mr. Harvey, just if he could, the gentleman could just lower the microphone a little bit.
Our audio AV guy standing,
Thank
couldn't
you.
hear you. Thank you, Mr. Galloway. And so by, you know, extending it, it allows basically, you know, whatever they're going to do with that property, you know, they have the time to do. If we hadn't granted the extension, it could have potentially allowed them to just, the project would have been deemed approved, even though we wouldn't have voted on it. There's a timetable we have to act upon whenever they start a process like that. Mr. Clark, did I do that?
No, that's correct, and it's something that we do frequently. Developers submit plans, the clock starts running, and to make sure that we don't run into a situation where there is we're violating the time limits in the municipality's planning code, we extend those dates. The applicant, the only way it doesn't get extended is if they withdraw the plans, and since they haven't withdrawn it, we have to extend it. In a matter such as this, no one comes before the township supervisors on a land development matter until they have cleared zoning. So frequently, depending on how lengthy zoning is, we will sometimes have to extend this 2 and 3 and 4 times. I think East Coast Propane is an example of one. Now that's on its way up to Commonwealth Court, I believe. So that one just keeps getting extended and getting extended because they have not withdrawn their land development application.
Right. We actually have one for a different 269 Canal Road. There's an extension this evening.
Yeah, I think we do them almost every meeting.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Viking, I think Viking property was going to be like an 8-story retirement complex on West Trenton. That ended up going to a court case for the same reasons this one basically is. The zoning was denied, and they took it up to court, and we fought it. And it basically, that we had to extend a lot because it just kept getting extended over and over for years, I think probably a couple of years. So that was that's the process, that's the law we have to follow.
I hear what you're saying. My question is, why did you say we're not approving a Wawa construction project, the zoning board turned it down, the plan is dead?
Because it is
That
dead.
seems to suggest that there's nothing pending before the board. That's what you sort of said, but there still was an open proposal that had to be extended, is what you're now saying.
Calling it a proposal, the original plan, which had been denied by the zoning board, essentially.
But does that
They
make
could-
it dead? That's what you said, it was
Yes.
dead.
Basically, that
The
plan.
East Coast Pay Plan is dead.
Right.
And that keeps getting extended as well.
They need a zoning relief, so without it, it's dead.
It's kind of like, they're starting.
Harvey, in essence, it's not dead, but it's not alive. They can't come before the Board of Supervisors until they get zoning approval. They don't have zoning approval. I'm surprised you and Mr. Zazzle haven't already discussed this. I would have thought you would have known that.
Well, I don't, because I don't practice zoning or land use or any of those things.
But
I'm
Mr.
just-
Zazzle does.
I'm here as a resident of Falls Township almost my entire life, and I've never appeared in front of a zoning board before this issue. And I think I've been to the supervisors meeting once before when there was an issue about a playground in my neighborhood. So I'm trying to understand why someone would make a comment in a meeting that the plan's dead, and you're telling me it's not dead and it's not alive, but there was a motion after everybody left who was here for Wawa to extend the time for Buckingham Retail Properties to do something on a plan that you said is neither dead or alive. If it was dead and the time expired, what would have happened?
It's dead right now. We just killed it when we vote on, if we vote on this.
We
It'll be
have-
dead. Until we re-advertise and start from zero.
Well, I'm not talking about the
No, I understand what you're
zoning
saying.
amendment. I'm talking
but
about.
this goes on with every land development. There's stuff that we've been extending over and over and over.
I'm not trying to upset
And
you, I'm
this-
just trying to
No,
understand.
I'm not upset at all.
He always talks loud.
I'm just loud. I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound like you're upsetting me.
He does.
The plan is dead in the sense that, like Mr. Harvey said, the zoning board denied it. So there's nothing that they can do. They can't get this Wawa done without coming through this room, which would require us advertising in the newspaper again and starting from scratch. So in essence, this plan is, nothing's going on with this plan. Nobody's going to be able to come anywhere until we start from ground zero.
And
And the purpose.
Like I said, that's why I originally wanted to table this. And they said, no, we don't need to table it. By rescinding this advertisement authorization is the same as tabling it. Tabling it will be the same as taking the whole thing, putting it through the shredder, and it's gone.
I understand that. What I was talking about is the extension for
Extension of the
Buckingham
whole thing.
Retail Properties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a
And-
different issue than this amendment, correct?
Well, yeah,
Separate
yeah,
things.
they are.
Okay.
And the extension is just because you talked about the fact that we did it late. We do every extension under manager comment. Every meeting, ever since I've been here, every extension's always done in under manager comment. It's the very last thing we do, aside from board comment. So that's just, that's the standard. And the same thing tonight with this 269 Canal Road. That'll be under manager comment at the end of the meeting.
Since this issue obviously is going to come back, as I guess Mr. Rocco said that it would be appropriate, there were some comments that were made at the beginning of that meeting regard to this particular amendment, because it's obviously coming back. And I appreciate just knowing what these things are. For example, there was an indication that part of it was illegal, and then there was the word preempted, and in my world, preemption and illegal are two different issues. I'd like to know which part is preempted and which part is illegal, because I have done some research, and I couldn't find in my research that any part of the existing zoning ordinance is illegal, as you stated, Mr. Harvey.
The
So which-
setbacks for the pumps having to be a certain distance away, the flammables and combustibles.
Preempted is the word he's getting
Preempted is preempted means the state law is above ours. So basically, if we tried to enforce our law, we would be, kind of, ignoring the state law, which is above ours, basically. So, calling it illegal is more of, I guess, a simplified version of trying to just make it clear for people that you can't enforce a law if the state law doesn't match it, basically. And that's basically what it was.
Right, so no part of this amendment is illegal, there's just preemption of certain aspects of it.
Exactly, yes.
Indicating that one of
Legal
those...
terminology is a preemption, yes.
And one of the things that was mentioned as being, it was preempted by the Combustible and Flammable Liquids Act.
Right.
And I pulled that up, and I can't find anything about setbacks in that law. So I don't want to belabor the point. If you could tell me which parts are illegal or preempted and give me those sites, that's all I want to know, because I can't find in my research anything in the law that says any part of the existing code is illegal or preempted. And even when I looked at some of the national fire codes, those are minimum setbacks, not maximum setbacks. And furthermore, if there was some preemption, I certainly know Mr. Hecker is in front of this board and the zoning board all the time.
Yep.
Mr. Hecker never mentioned that any of the variances that he sought were already preempted by state law.
He didn't need a
He
variance.
didn't need
He
those
didn't
variances.
need-
That's
he
the
didn't-
other point.
He didn't need those
Those
variances.
variances that we were changing weren't anything that they had requested.
Right. I just want to know what the impetus is to change this law, and it was represented that the law is outdated, it's old.
That's why.
But I just want to know what those things are, because those terms they mean something.
Yes.
And I want to know why it's outdated, what's outdated about it, what's illegal about it, what's preempted about it, what's changed since 1985 to the current time that makes these laws outdated or illegal, because we're changing them by, I guess, mere coincidence, along with the time that Wawa needs these changes to put in the gas station.
Wawa does
Don't
not
need
need
the
those
changes. Need these changes, Mr.
Again, you're
Rosenberg.
trying to make these allegations, and we explained at that meeting, Wawa already complied with the setbacks. Wawa didn't need that.
Yeah.
And as you attending all of those hearings, that's why Mr. Hacker never asked for that variance, and that's why the developer never did.
Okay, well-
This has been done during a routine review of our entire zoning code. We are doing a routine review of our entire zoning code to update various parts of it. Hopefully, at some point, we're going to be presenting the update to the board, and then at that point in time, they're going to be voting on a lot of different changes with the zoning code. This was one of those things that was identified during that routine review of the zoning
Were
code.
there other things identified
Regarding this
Yes.
ordinance?
regarding the routine review?
Regarding this section?
Regarding any part, the entire
Yes,
routine
this has
review?
been ongoing for years. This isn't something new.
Yes, we've been doing this for a long
This is the only
time.
amendment that sought to be changed.
Because while we were thinking of amending it to deal with the 1,500 feet and the other issue, we thought we might as well just take care of all of these at the same time.
So the only issue, so we're clear, the only issue that keeps Wawa from building a gas station is that 1,500 feet distance thing, correct? The other ones that...
Not as the plans,
Not their,
not as
not
the
their plan
plans.
as submitted. They
No,
needed, they
it does
needed
not. It does
multiple
not.
other variances.
Well,
Yes.
in terms of this particular aspect of this particular amendment, the only thing that prevented them from getting approval was the 1,500 foot, this particular
No,
part.
the only thing that
other ones
prevented
were
them from
dimensional.
getting
Can I finish?
approval, they had
Only one-
all of these other
Were
variances.
dimensional variances,
All right.
correct?
All right.
Okay, but with regard to this particular part of the zoning code, the only thing, all these other amendments don't mean anything to them. They met those
This
requirements.
is the only one that impacted them.
This is the only one that impacted them.
Even if we had changed it, which we did not,
But we don't have to let them.
even if we changed it to the 1,500 feet within Falls Township, there's still another service station within 1,500 feet in Falls Township. So we wouldn't have done anything for Wawa. Believe it or not, there's no conspiracy here to get a Wawa in Falls Township. No one up here, I've never heard anyone speak publicly for or against a Wawa. No one's ever done that. There's never been anyone from Wawa, except when they came with a sketch plan, that's ever been in touch with us by way of their attorney or anyhow else. I know it doesn't look good that we were changing this just to get a Wawa in. That's not the case. We became aware of these issues when the Wawa zoning things were going on. And it made sense to change it. It didn't make sense to do it while the zoning hearings were going on, which we went through last meeting. But there's no monkey business here. Like I told you after the last meeting, I live a quarter mile from there. I'm very well aware. I live right off of West Trenton, directly behind the post office in Penn's Grant. I'm well aware of the traffic there. It's not a good traffic spot. It's a major traffic problem. And unless they come with a golden plan that shows some genius traffic pattern change, then it's going to not be a good idea. I mean, I'm not coming out against a Wawa or for a Wawa, but I'm well aware of the traffic there. I drive there every single day on my way to Lower Bucks Hospital where I'm working. I go up to Route 13, I make the right. Coming home, it's just as bad. So I know the area very well. But there's no monkey business here. No one was doing this for a Wawa. No one in this 5 of us has ever spoken to anyone from Wawa. I'm going to say that again. And we didn't do this just to fit a Wawa in.
All right, Mr. Rosenberg, your 5 minutes is well passed up.
Well, I didn't get my 5 minutes.
You've had a lot of 5 minutes.
But, you know,
move on,
all
Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
doing is asking questions about representations
Mr. Chairman,
were
his
made at the
time
last
has
meeting.
been up, and he's just been sitting here making
and
accusations.
That's all I was asking,
All right.
okay? You know, I was told the appeal period was ended. That wasn't true either. So
That was a mistake that
these are
somebody here made.
legitimate questions. And I think as a resident, I'm entitled to ask them.
Yeah.
Now,
And
my
I think,
5 minutes,
but I
everybody
think
else
we've
knows.
answered, no, it hasn't been. That's not true, and you know that. You've been up there for quite a while, and we've had a lot of back and forth, and you've asked some questions, and we've answered them. Most of the questions you've asked are questions that you asked last time, and we answered them last time, and the answers haven't changed. But your time is up. There's 5 minutes is well past up.
You won't answer any more of my questions?
If you want to come, if you want to email us, any one of us, you want to, we can have, you want to give your email to Mr. Clark, and he can send you the specific sections of the Combustibles and Flammable Liquids Act that you referenced. That's fine. We have no issue with that either. But we do have to move on.
I should
okay?
send him a email with my questions.
If you want to, you can do that, or do that to me, or do
Keep
that
it
to
business,
anybody.
but I'll be happy to call you and we can discuss it all
Yeah.
anytime you like.
I appreciate it. All right, thank you.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Mr. Zaslow.
I'd like also to try to hone in on the specifics of the Combustible and Flammable Liquids Act, because I read it, and I am an attorney, but I don't see in here anything about setbacks. If we're missing it, we'd like to be educated. I read through the entire law. I see not one sentence about setbacks, and you're saying the preemption of the state law is as to setbacks of gas pumps. It is not in there, at least to my reading.
Okay.
Is it in there? Have you looked at it?
Our attorneys have looked at it, and they've told us that there is the preemption. So again, if, we'd be happy to have Mr. Clark, get in touch with you and talk
Maybe
over
that
the
we're
discussion.
missing it, but we're attorneys, and we don't see it there, and he knows more, but he'll tell us.
Okay.
You keep saying that this is dead, ground zero, we have to start all over. You are aware that the zoning has been appealed
Yes.
to Common Pleas Court.
Yes.
If they win in Common Pleas Court, this comes right back before
No,
you.
not
as
without re-advertising, it doesn't.
No,
They
not
don't just come back before us.
I mean, talk about the whole
No,
plan.
they
the whole
do.
plan
The
itself.
plan.
Oh, yeah, if they win the appeal?
plan, which
Yes, if they
They
win the appeal.
appeal, yes.
Which is why we're fighting it.
so the plan will come right back to you if they get the zoning overturned.
as
Just
it
so
was,
that is
yes.
clear. So it's not dead. What you did tonight with your ordinance that Mr. Rocco talked about last meeting, and now you've rescinded the advertising, it seems as if the underlying ordinance is still pending before you. Your rescission tonight appears to have rescinded the amendment that you were proposing.
No.
You've rescinded that. I'd like it to be clear.
Yeah, we could be clear.
Well, we haven't voted yet. Yes, we'll make it clear. We're
Right, it's
rescinding the
nor do
entire
we
thing.
advertise.
The entirety of the
Yes.
ordinance. One last item, Mr. Chairman, may I ask, I took the unfortunate liberty of looking at our interchange, you and I, at the last hearing. And I was rather surprised to see that the tape of the meeting that you publicly air is like President Nixon's tape, that you cut out something which you may have found you wish hadn't been on there. I'm just curious, how is it that tapes are put out on the public forum, on public television, and parts of it are doctored out that you may have felt you didn't want on there?
Well, it's a
Public,
nice, that's a
President
nice shot.
Nixon
Well, that's all right,
and,
Mr.
and Clark.
Mudslinging.
Darrell, this is
I'm
beneath you.
All right, Mr. Clark, Mr. Clark.
The
That's all right.
policy of this
which I was
town.
looking-
Mr. Clark, thank you. Mr. Zaslow, for as long as someone has been holding this gavel, even before I was holding this gavel, the people running the meeting, when the gavel bangs, okay, and the chairman adjourns the meeting's over at that point, or is interrupted at that point. There's never been any doctoring of any tape. There was one, I will talk, where there was a comment that was made at a microphone by a speaker of a vulgar comment. It was years ago.
It wasn't so much vulgar, it was in violation of a court order.
Oh, right,
And we
I'm
were going
sorry.
to get sued,
That's right.
so we had to edit it
We had to
out.
edit because it was somebody that had said something, a board member who had made a comment that was actually something that violated a court order from a lawsuit, and we had to edit that out. So there was no editing of anything, and if you did watch enough of the meeting, which I'm assuming you did hear me apologize a couple times, and I'll do it again this evening.
Appreciate
I would
that.
expect you to apologize for speaking over me as I was trying to control the meeting and getting into a shouting match with our attorney. That was something that, quite frankly, you shouldn't have done. You have enough experience in municipal law, Mr. Zaslow, and you've sat where Mr. Clark has sat before, and you know that the back and forth isn't helpful to anybody. Certainly, I got under my skin a little bit, and I did apologize, and I do it again. But I would expect that, as we have now, a very good conversation, and we're keeping it that way, I hope.
Well, we would certainly try to do that. I appreciate your good work. You do recognize you let 15 people talk as long as they wanted bells ringing and ignored. You didn't like what I was suggesting to you, and correctly so, I may add. And you decided to gavel out and cut it out of the meeting. But we
well, nothing
must
was
have
cut
good
out.
relations and good government, so
Nothing was
there
cut
I
out.
stand. We would appreciate, without the need to hunt it down, if there is something in that in the Combustible Flammable Liquids Act, it should be, it's a four-page statute. It's not some 1,000 pages. We'd like to know what it is for our own edification.
As I've already said, I've already asked the solicitor to communicate that.
Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
I've sat on this board for 6 years, and I've known Mr. Harvey much longer than that. To see Mr. Harvey lose his cool, so to speak. He's one of the most calm, level-headed people, which is why we elect him chairman year after year. Because most of us couldn't, I'm a very loud person. I don't know if you noticed. Mr. Rosenberg thought I was yelling. I'm not yelling. That's just the way I talk. My wife still cries sometimes. It's just the way I talk. But for Mr. Harvey to lose his cool, he has to be pretty upset. I just wanted to say that. I've known him for quite a few years, and he's a very level-headed person. So this isn't an accusation, anything directed at you. I'm just saying.
I hope not.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't meant towards you. I'm
My
just saying
presentation.
that a lot of excited people in that room that night. A lot of emotions were flying, but for Mr. Harvey to get excited, it takes a lot.
My presentation was on 5 points of law, not
Well, I
about...
wasn't questioning your presentation or saying that you were right or wrong. I'm just saying it takes a lot for Mr. Harvey to get to that.
We'll all try to do better in the future. Good government requires it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zazzle. Okay, anybody else? See no hands there. Motion to close public comment?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so before the board is a motion and a second to rescind advertisement of the ordinance.
Did we? Motion and second?
Yeah, because we had to in order to open up the public comment. Okay.
I don't,
Oh, did we motion?
I don't think we motioned or seconded it, yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, all right, is there a
I'll
motion
make the
then?
motion to rescind.
Okay,
In its entirety.
yes.
Second?
Is there a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay. All right, item 5 on our agenda is consider proposal from Catalina's Communications for media relations for the township. Do you want to do this or?
Sure. Social media is, as most people know, the way a lot of people communicate these days. And, the township created a social media page, and within a week, there's over 1,000 likes and messages constantly asking questions. And with that and Twitter, and, we have all these different Facebook pages. The police have one, the fire marshal has one, the Parks and Rec have one, the township has one. And it's a great way for us to get communications out to residents, what's going on, snow emergencies, whatever emergencies. It's not something that we're very good at, because a lot of us don't know how to get the message out there. So Teresa Catalinas is a former reporter that covered Falls Township for many years, probably 10 years ago, or close to it, and started her own PR firm. She came recommended from another municipality, so we were going to hire her to help us with social media and public relations and that sort.
Add one of the other things that kind of brought this to a head for several years now, really, since I've been here, and before that too, I think, the township does newsletters from the town, usually twice a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And that is information about recycling. It could have information. There's usually a fire marshal's section. There's a police section. And it was, information about phone numbers for the township, information about recycling, information about all kinds of things happening in Falls Township. There was a company we had for a long time, I don't remember who it was, and they basically did everything. They went out, they solicited advertisements from local businesses that basically paid for the whole newsletter. We just supplied the information, they organized it, they sent it out, and it was a great publication. And then that company essentially stopped doing that work. It took us a couple of years to find another company that would do it. For a couple of years, we didn't have a newsletter from this township, and just because we couldn't find a company that would do that. And we found a company. They did it last year. They had a lot of problems doing it, and they've decided, or they've actually contacted Mr. Gray and said that they're not doing it anymore. It is something that is sort of beyond the ability of our staff to do on top of everything else they're doing. And so Ms. Catalinas can also work on that. This is sort of an as-needed thing we're looking for. Unfortunately, Ms. Catalinas was going to be here this evening. She got stuck somewhere else, so she wasn't able to be here to sort of talk a little bit about her experiences and her abilities. But the social media certainly is part of it, but also just the ability for our people to put together a newsletter, for her to organize it, and then have it sent out is something that we also might be looking for her to do. So that's that part.
Also, you'd think, the years we didn't have a newsletter, the amount of people that were looking for a newsletter was, you'd think, why don't you just do it electronically? Because there's a lot of people that wanted that newsletter to hold.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the ad hoc communication we may ask her to do will help provide some transparency and some important things that are happening in the township as well, so.
Okay.
And also saw what a lot of other townships around us were doing, with emails and getting their information out.
Right, and they're hiring people similar to Ms. Catalinas to do that work for them. Bristol Township, for example, does this with not the same company, nor the same person, but they do it as well. So she did submit a proposal here from us that we have. It really has a lot of, essentially it boils down to pretty much all of her outlined sort of work that she could do for us. Boils down to $50 an hour, depending on how she's being used, and when she's being used. So that's what we have before us, just this proposal from her. I don't know if there's any, can't really ask her any questions, but any other comments or discussions?
None.
No? Okay, we've all had a chance to talk with her, meet with her, and have some discussions with her. Any public comment needed? See no hands. All right, is there a motion then to approve of the proposal and retain the services of Catalinas Communications for media relations for Falls Township?
So moved.
Seconded.
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Boraski?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Dents?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
Okay. All right, item 6 is consider appointment to the Township of Falls Authority Board. We've had an opening on that board for a couple months now. There were a lot of very, very qualified people who put letters of interest in, from all over the township, and it was one of the reasons why it took us a while to sort of make a decision about this. I think ultimately, again, we could have gone a number of different directions in terms of who we're going to retain for this, but the board will entertain any motions at this point. This is an appointment that will just fill out the rest of this year. This term that's vacant ends at the end of December. So is there any motions at this point to appoint anybody?
I'll make a motion at this time to approve Brian Binney to TOFA for a term to expire December 31st.
I think the end of this year, I think.
Okay.
So. Yes. So.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. I think all of us know Mr. Binney. He's worked on the Planning Commission for a long time and has experience in surveying, owns his own business, I think, right? So he's...
For years he's been on putting letters in.
Yeah,
He has
and he
12 I think
has.
he's got about 12 years.
Yeah, and he's wanted to be on, he's actually requested to be on TOFA before, which is another thing we considered with some of the other people that had just sort of applied for the first time. And we appreciate everybody who puts letters in. We hate to say no to people because we do have boards and commissions where we do have vacancies and nobody ever puts in for, unfortunately. So we hate to say no to people, but there's only one opening. All right, motion made and seconded for Mr. Binney to fill the TOFA position. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Does that need to be a resolution? No?
No, it doesn't. There was one
Zoning
here,
hearing
but
board.
yeah, just zoning hearing board's resolution. This is a little miscommunication on that one. That was my fault. Item 7, consider appointment of a conflict solicitor for Falls Township. We talked about earlier about an issue going to being appealed, a zoning issue being appealed. We thought it was best to retain the services of a conflict solicitor to take on that appeal. This is something we are going to be fighting, and so that particular item that was brought up earlier with that development is something we are going to support our zoning board in their decision to vote against that and deny those all those or the entire project. Is there a motion to approve or appoint anybody?
Are we appointing a person or a firm?
Well, I guess the person and the firm. I suppose we can do both,
Okay.
both ways.
Yeah, Cliff Bidley-Meyer and his firm were our, yeah, our conflict solicitor in the past, and I'd like to appoint them again. They agreed that the rate of $170 an hour.
Right.
So I guess we can just name Cliff or the firm.
You name Cliff Bidley-Meyer, that'll be sufficient.
Okay, that's my motion.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded, and $170 an hour is how much the solicitor, township
Correct.
solicitor gets paid. It's also the same amount for the land development attorney. Okay. So it's in line with everything else. Okay. All right, motion made and seconded for Mr. Bidley-Meyer, $170 an hour. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Galloway had to step out for a minute. All right. Okay, item number 8 is discussion about Falls Township social media policy. The township has...
I'm sorry, is that open for public comment?
I'm sorry, I hadn't thought there'd be public comment about the appointment of a township solicitor.
I just wanted to ask the question of how do you come to that, just so that I can understand?
Yes, you can
Sure,
come up with
that's
public
fine.
comment. Get
Yeah,
up.
apologize.
That's okay.
It's one of those items I didn't
Yeah, we didn't think anybody
I'd be
was-
interested in.
That's okay, I'm not a big microphone person, so are you able to just explain what that process is for? Like, why is there a need for a conflict attorney?
Well, the feeling...
Clark, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The normal procedure in almost every municipality is when the zoning hearing board renders a decision and it is appealed to the Court of Common Pleas, the zoning hearing board solicitor stands down and the township attorney defends the zoning hearing board's position. I believe that the board, in discussions with Mr. Harvey and with several of the other board members individually, decided that under the circumstances, it was perhaps best to have someone other than my office handle this matter based on what I think was some of the accusations that were flying around a few weeks ago.
Okay.
So they thought it best not to have us involved, and we completely agree.
Okay.
Mr. Bidley-Meyer's been our conflict solicitor in the past. For some reason, this year, we didn't reappoint as conflict solicitor. It's just something that was overlooked at our reorganization meeting in January.
And we don't often have a need for one, and I think
Yeah.
the decision was, when we need one, we'll appoint one. So,
Actually, last year we did it on the March 18th meeting, I
Yeah.
believe.
did we?
We must have needed one.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
yeah.
I
that's
was
the
just
only
curious,
reason.
because I'm unfortunately very new to this,
Okay.
this type of situation, so I was just wondering why one would need to be appointed, so, thank you, I
right.
appreciate the time.
No problem. Okay. All right, so item 8 is discussion on township social media policy. Again, as Mr. Dents mentioned, social media becoming a more important part of how governments do business. Yeah. Of how governments do business. We have township staff that maintain different sites for us and do different work that is over social media. It made sense for us to develop a social media policy. We're not adopting this evening because it was just sort of presented to the board. And then Mr. Clark, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the basic highlights of this?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. The policy already exists. What we are essentially doing right now is supplementing the policy. Just as the technology on which people can use social media is expanding rapidly, we felt the need to try to keep up with that and to try to make sure that our policy was addressing some of those changes in technology and some of the other issues. We have essentially expanded what we're calling social media. Originally, we had just referred to social media sites. Now we are referring to someone's weblog, a blog, a journal, a diary, personal websites, social networking or affinity websites, web bulletin boards, or chat rooms. We are trying to make it even clearer that employees are free to express themselves as private citizens on social media sites, subject to certain provisions. We are trying to make sure that it is clear. One of the newer sections is that if the conduct on social media begins to adversely affect your job performance or the job performance of any of your coworkers, that may lead to disciplinary action. An example of where we've just tried to give some clarity to members of the township employees. 720.3 used to say, speak respectfully about the townships and our residents, officials, and employees. We've expanded that greatly to what we, not assuming for a moment that anyone will mean what respectful means. We've added to avoid using statements, photographs, video, or audio that reasonably could be viewed as malicious, obscene, threatening, or intimidating. Then we give examples of such conduct because we want it to be very clear what we're talking about. We also encourage the employees to, if they're always using accurate information, if they're talking about anything related to the township, we also want to make it clear that when they're expressing their personal opinions, they should not be identifying themselves as township employees. One of the other things that we want to make sure that is clear to the employees in one of the new sections is you can't be posting to these social media sites during the workday. So when you're working, even though you can do it from your handheld device, you're not permitted to do it during the workday. And finally, we've added a section about acting on behalf of the township, because certain township employees are given the responsibility to post things on the township website or on other websites, and that can be viewed as township official action, and we're just trying to caution the employees that they have to be very careful in those instances, and if they're uncertain, they need to check with the township manager prior to posting anything. And finally, we've added a section that if there is a violation of the township policy and an employee brings it to our attention, that there will be not any negative action taken against the quote-unquote whistleblower, and that if any harassment arises to that person who brought it to our attention, the person doing the harassing will be disciplined. So we are trying to protect any employee who brings a violation of our policy to our attention.
Okay. All right, thank you. Comments or questions or any discussion?
There was a story in the newspaper today about Kurt Schilling. Did anybody see that?
Yes.
Yes.
I did.
That goes right in line with this. I mean, it was pretty bad, but a lot of people lost their jobs or positions over it.
Yeah, one got fired from the Yankees, right?
Yes. Sort of like a part-time employee. Kind of
Yes.
Well, I have no love for Red Sox, but that's a jab at Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so that goes right in line with this timing-wise.
Yeah, I mean, in the private sector, it's you know, a necessity, so.
I'm in the construction business, and we see it a lot now. You know, you get a new hire, and you're signing off on social media policies that are basically the same thing.
Right.
We see teachers as well running into trouble all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my thought too. You know? And it's, you know, and we've seen this before. I know the issue of, I'm trying to think, it was, I'm thinking back to the, way back, John Rocker, who was the relief pitcher for Atlanta years and years ago, was in a Sports Illustrated article and, you know, said some pretty outrageous things about every minority group that existed on Earth, I think. And then he was punished by Atlanta and his baseball team and people questioning. And Riley Cooper, we saw that just a couple of years ago with the Eagles, and say, well, it's freedom of speech. Well, but there is freedom of speech. But you know, when you're representing, and that's kind of what a lot of this, as Mr. Clark was saying, when you're in a position where, you know, it's just you and you're only talking, okay, but if you're representing a business or a company, or in this case a government, it's not just your speech. You know, certainly, you know, as the gentleman we still have here in the room, Mr. DiPolito, Fire Marshal DiPolito. We have a Facebook page. It's sort of the fire marshal's, post. He puts something out there about emergencies. He puts something out just about, check your smoke detectors or something like that. He's doing that as the Falls Township Fire Marshal. If he posts something on there that is inappropriate, not that he's ever inappropriate, but if he, posts things that are inappropriate, that's now coming from the Falls Township Fire Marshal. It's not just coming from Rich DiPolito, a private citizen. And so that's the kind of thing that we have to be cautious of. So, any other comments or questions? All right. So again, this is just something to consider. I think it's it's as technology changes, these things always have to be updated. I mean, it seems like it wasn't that long ago that we did this, a social media policy. It wasn't light years ago, but now we're a couple of years ago. Now we're having to do some pretty serious updating just because of as things change, as things happen, we have to keep up with the times. Okay, so we'll come back to that at some point, maybe next meeting or meeting after, to consider that. Next item on the agenda is the minutes from February 17th, 2015. Comments, suggestions, corrections for the minutes?
That was a tough one.
Yeah, can we hold off on approving the minutes? Does anyone mind?
It's fine. You want
I
to
haven't reviewed them, and
Okay.
they're pretty lengthy.
That's fine. We can come back to it next meeting. Is that all right with everybody?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, we don't have a need for executive session. Mr. Gray.
Yes, just a few items tonight. The township received a letter from Historic Fallsington about their upcoming Historic Fallsington Day event, which will be held on October 10th. Each year, the township sets aside $6,000 for this event as a donation. They have provided, Historic Fallsington has provided a letter and a budget for this event. At this time, the board is asked to consider this donation to Historic Fallsington.
Okay. Comments or questions?
No.
No. All right. So looking for a donation, $5,885 for Historic Fallsington.
So moved.
Seconded?
Mrs. Pullen?
Mr. Galloway?
Yes.
Mr. Bransky?
Yes.
Mr. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Pitts?
Yes.
Mr. Rocco?
Yes.
The township had a state of emergency beginning 6 p.m. Saturday, February 21st, lasting through 6 p.m. Sunday, February 22nd, due to a recent storm. Per the township ordinance, the manager may declare a local snow emergency, subject to ratification by the Board of Supervisors at their next regularly scheduled meeting. At this time, the board is asked to consider this action posed by the township manager.
Okay. Don't imagine there's any comments or questions. Or is there a motion to ratify the decision to have a snow emergency?
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Township received a letter from John Koopman dated March 2nd regarding the land development application for Brian Brzezinski for premium excavating, requesting an extension of time on this project until May 31st, 2015. The board is asked to consider this extension.
Okay. Comments or questions?
No.
No? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the extension for 269 Canal Road till May 31st, 2015?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Last week, the township received notification from Moody's Investor Service that the township's credit rating has been upgraded from an AA3 to an AA2. This is good news for the township, and this increase is based on conservative budgeting and a healthy fund balance held by the township. The highest attainable status is a AAA and then an AA1, and as mentioned, we are in AA2. So just want to let the Board of Supervisors know about this.
Okay. All right. And obviously, that's congratulations goes to you, Mr. Gray, as well as to our finance and our whole staff, really, for doing an excellent job of maintaining the finances we have here. Somebody had asked, well, how come we're not higher? And Mr. Clark brought up an interesting point, which makes sense when you think about it. We don't borrow money, and your credit rating, it's one of those catch-22s. To get a good credit rating, you have to borrow money, but to borrow money, you have to have a good credit rating. We just don't borrow money, and so therefore our credit rating is high, very, very high, actually, when you think of other communities. Mr. Mariani, who's often here, talks about, Stockton, California, and Detroit, Michigan, and communities that are going bankrupt, and everybody, the whole government's, going under, and here we have a credit rating that's rising. coming out of a recession. So, and the boards that have sat here have always taken a lot of care over how we've spent the people's money. It is our money too. We live here. So I want to thank everybody for all the work they put into that. And in terms of debt, when did we pay off our debt, Mr. Gray? We've been debt-free for...
1999, the township defeased its last general obligation bond. We did have a water sewer revenue bond, and that was finished in 2007.
Okay.
So we haven't had any debt since that time.
So we've been debt-free for 8 years.
Yes.
Okay. It's also good news. All right. And obviously helps lift the credit rating.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
That's all. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Board comment. Mr. Boraski?
Just real quick, just like to say tonight we had a nice informational meeting. I know I fielded a lot of questions about how come this car wasn't towed, how come my street wasn't plowed yet, and I think these guys do a great job. They work hard. It takes time, you know. And the only other thing, I know it's on our TV cable channel, but the Planning Commission, I sat on that board for about 6 years, and they are in need of another member. If anybody's interested, you can email the township, email myself, and I'd like to see that get filled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
That's all I have for tonight.
Okay. Mr. Galloway?
Just to remind everyone that the 27th annual Bucks County St. Patrick's Day Parade is coming up on Saturday, March the 14th. And we've had some questions because of St. Joe's closing. But like to just remind everyone that we are going to march the same route. We're going to meet at St. Joe's. We're going to march right up New Falls Road, just like normal, same times, everything. Hopefully we'll have good weather. If it's 40 degrees, it'll feel balmy. So,
Yeah.
but that's it, and I hope to see everyone out there on the 14th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dents?
I have no comment.
Mr. Rocco?
I have no comment. Thank you.
Okay. Just a couple of things for me. The township of some municipalities around us have enacted in the past year or so ordinances about bamboo. Increasingly, people are planting bamboo. It grows very fast. It grows very dense. It provides a lot of privacy. It looks nice. People like, all those things, probably cheaper even than putting in a fence. The problem with bamboo is it grows incredibly fast, and it grows everywhere. And once you plant it, it's almost impossible to get rid of. And we've had complaints from people in the township. One woman who hadn't planted bamboo in her yard, it was her neighbor's yard, and the bamboo had actually grown to the point and run underneath the ground, the roots, and was now coming up underneath the siding of her house. And so the problem becomes that there's no, it's hard to sort of fix that problem, not just the siding on the house, but how to get rid of the roots of the bamboo. So we have asked our solicitor to take a look at some ordinances in adjacent communities about bamboo and how to regulate its growth, its planting, et cetera. We've had our EAC, our Environmental Advisory Council, take a look at that, and I think has the Shade Tree Commission also looked at that
Yes,
ordinance?
they have.
All right, so people that are really kind of into this, and they're into the environmental issues, and are into gardening, and know a lot about this more than I do, more than Mr. Clark does, more than Ms. Gallagher knows, certainly. They've taken a look at this. It is something that we're considering. There was sort of a draft that I think some of the comments that were made from those other committees are going to go to the solicitor's office, and they're going to take a look at how to adjust those a little bit. But if if you're planting bamboo, or if you buy a house that has bamboo planted, you're responsible for it. If it starts growing up in your neighbor's yard and destroying their yard, or growing into a pool and destroying the pool, or something else in that neighbor's yard, you're responsible, even if you bought the house and it was already there. So it's something to consider. There are types of bamboo that are not a problem, that don't spread that way, but the type apparently that does spread is the one that's, I guess, people buy the most, or they plant it and then it just grows like crazy. I know I see it, and I'm sure Mr. Rocco, Mr. Brasky see it too. There's a section of right off of Lower Marsville Road where it branches off into Old Locust, and it just somebody planted some bamboo somewhere, and almost the entire area now is just covered with it. And on days like this or nights like this, when it snows or it's real heavy precipitation, that bamboo comes all the way out into the street. And bends completely, and has actually blocked off a whole lane of traffic on Lower Marsville Road, which is a road that doesn't have any shoulder to begin with. So it's a traffic hazard. It's a real problem, and we've had to send crews out to actually cut it down, just because it was a problem. So that's something we are looking at. And I want to finish off just by making mention of Mr. Gallus Obert, who passed away recently. After, I think it was a week and a half ago, maybe, something like that. Mr. Obert certainly brought up a lot of issues and ruffled a lot of feathers and wasn't always a fan of mine or a fan of anybody up here, but you know, all in all, I think, you know, his heart was with this community. He cared about the community, cared about the school district, cared about the township. Ran for supervisor at least once, I think. You know, and you know, was a regular staple at a lot of our meetings, voicing his concerns about different things. And you know, certainly you didn't always have to agree with him, but you respected the fact that he cared so much. So condolences out to his family here in Falls Township, and I know he has relatives in Bristol Township too. So certainly he hasn't been in this meetings in a while, our meetings in a while. I know he was visiting Mr. Clark a lot at the school board meetings, but you know, he certainly added some interest to the meeting, so he'll be missed. And
He always had a kind word whenever I'd run into him in public too.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure
He
to
was,
talk to.
yeah. So he was all in all a very nice man who cared about Falls Township. So we again, our condolences out to his family. Thank everybody for all their efforts. Again, it was a very, very good meeting, echoing Mr. Boraski's points. A lot of stuff talked about that we felt we wanted to get out to the public, and I think that hopefully that message gets out. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.